Bill, it's the close season, but it seems it's a busier time than ever for us at Raith TV and for yourselves in the club. I was delighted on behalf of Raith TV to get your call last week and get invited down to chat with you about where the club are at across all dimensions. So welcome to Raith TV, and I believe you're going to give us a real insight into what's going on at the club at the moment.
Well, I'm certainly going to try anyway, and this is really part of our trying to establish better relationships between the board, the management, the supporters and so on, so that everybody's clear about where the club is going and what's happening in the club. So we've been praised in the recent past for our openness and our honesty, and I want to continue that. So that's really why I got in touch with you, so that we could put a few things out there that maybe there's been some rumours flying.
Great, I'm looking forward to your company, Bill. So first thing I want to start with on behalf of the fans, as all the questions are, is to ask a bit about the squad structure. We know that it's a hybrid system. You were looking at part-time, full-time, the hybrid structure. How did yourselves as a board reach the decision that this was the best model for our team?
Right, well, what happened was on the day after the draw down at Palmerston, we met with the manager and the assistant manager, the whole board, for a 3-hour session. And we hammered out a number of things. First of all, what was our approach going to be in the coming season? And we agreed that it was going to continue to be trying to play good, flowing, attacking football. That's our main aim. Entertaining football as well, but with a more of an emphasis on we've got to win more games. Because if we'd won half of the games that we'd drawn last season, we would have won the league. So we appreciate that we can play good football, but there's got to be a bit of grit there, there's got to be a bit of determination. So we're trying to add that into it. And we then went through each individual player, had a look at them, decided on whether we were going to release them or extend contracts or offer new contracts, and so on. And at the end of 3 hours, I must say, we'd come to, I would say, about 99% agreement between the management and ourselves. And so then, since then, John and Paul have been working like beavers, really they've looked at a lot of players beforehand, of course, but they've been sounding out players, talking to them, talking to their agents and so on, and have made tremendous progress, I would think, during the past week or two.
And this strikes me as John and Paul have worked with a kind of part-time hybrid system before at Raith Rovers, but this seems kind of hybrid plus, given the numbers that full-time players that will be involved.
Yeah, it is in a sense, because, I mean, if I look at my list here, I think we're going to have 11, 12, maybe even more full-time players. So the core of the team is still going to be full-time. But bringing in some part-time players gives us an opportunity to bring in strength of players who maybe don't want to be full-time. And given the differentials now that are reducing between paying for full-time and part-time and all that sort of thing, we think it'll work well. We're going to be signing a number of really good players who have other jobs but want to play part-time, and they will strengthen and supplement what we've got in the full-time squad.
These interviews at the start of the season are often amongst our most watched interviews across the entirety of any season.
That frightens me.
Well, but this one has got a particularly interesting dimension, and I think probably across modern football clubs, in that we've got the chairman who's saying, here's a list of who's under contract, here's who we've offered deals to, here's who we've signed, 1 or 2 we're going to keep up our sleeve for the time being, but there certainly will be a reveal within this interview. Let's just jump in there, because I do think it's as open as a chairman and a board of directors can be. Let's start with the guys who have contracts and we fully expect to be here. I have a list of names if I go through. Robbie Thompson, Louis Vaughan, Kyle Benedictus, Ewan Murray. There has been some debate and discussion if there's a clause there, but Ewan's a Rovers player.
As far as I've had a look at the contract several times, and there is no release clause as far as I can see.
Okay, we have young Jamie Watson, Tony Dingwall. We were expecting Tony to be here, but we're all desperate to see him play. We know he's got a real verve and talent about him. What's the update on his injury?
Well, he had an operation about 2 weeks ago now, so he's under a rehabilitation programme, and it's going well so far, but that's only 2 weeks. The total time that we expected him to be out doing that would be about 8 weeks. So we expect him to be back sometime in August. which is not too late. You know, he'll be in some of the games. He'll miss 1 or 2 games, but he will be back, we hope, in August.
Coming on to some of the young talent that we've got 3 names that all kind of excite Raith Rovers fans for the future. Kieran Bowie, Dylan Tate, and you've re-signed Jack Smith. How's Jack's fitness doing?
That's right, Jack is fine. He's got a problem with his foot, but we think that can be overcome with a special kind of boot.
He was talking about podiatry, implants in his football boots before the season.
Yeah, that's right. There's some kind of insert that they can put into the boot, because I think one leg is an inch shorter than the other, we've discovered. But he's got great potential, Jack. Everybody's seen it. And hopefully this will be a season where we can get more out of him. Dylan Tate, you've mentioned already, made his first appearance in the back end of 1 game, but we've got high hopes for him for the future. And of course, Kieran Bowie, we think, is going to be a real star for the future. And one of the things I would hope to see, maybe not this coming season, but in the next 2 seasons, would be Kieran and Jack maybe playing up front together and seeing how they do.
Possibly room for another modern apprentice? Are you still looking around?
Yeah, if we can find the quality. This is one of the problems I think that we've got, both with Fife Elite and with other academies. It's very difficult to find kids who are actually going to progress from that stage into full-time footballers in a year or 2 years. But we're looking around still, and the money is there for another apprentice. So
there's been some extensions, some offers of contract. We can go through them and name some names. Dave Mackay, Dean Linus, Grant Gillespie.
Just before we get on to that one, Davey, I'll just say a wee word about Lewis Vaughan and Robbie Thompson.
Oh yeah, please do.
Because although they're part of that full-time squad, you know, they're both injured, everybody knows that. Louis, the news is good. He started running again last week. So again, we expect him to maybe miss a few games at the start of the season, but we expect him to be back in August, which would be good. And him teaming up with Regan Henry, who we'll talk about again in a minute, is a great prospect, I think, for us. Robbie Thompson, the original prognosis was that he wouldn't be ready till March. We're now hearing that it could be December, maybe January, so that he'll be fully fit, really by the transfer window in January. So he'll be back in looking to fight for his place in January, we hope.
Brilliant. Well, that actually bridges over nicely. If I can juggle the people who've been where there's some contract talks going on. Start with, we've got Dean Linus, goalkeeper, Dave Mackay, Grant Gillespie and Ian Davidson. What's the position with each of these lads? Grant Gillespie, is he not under contract at the moment?
Yeah, we've offered them, we've offered them either an extension of their contract or a new contract, those 4. And the present position is that we're waiting for them to respond. There's been some negotiation with some agents and with the players themselves, but none of these have come to a conclusion yet. We're hopeful that that will happen really within the next week, because the boys are back training on the 13th of this month, just next week. So there needs to be some conclusion to those 4. We suspect that 1 or 2 of them will stay, 1 or 2 of them, for various reasons, personal reasons, might want to go. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Absolutely. And if any of the 4 do depart, have we got players lined up? Is there a
list? Oh yes. The manager and the assistant manager, due diligence, I think is the phrase. They've been doing it ad nauseam. They've been working night and day. So we've got other prospects to fill in the gaps that might occur.
I did smile when one of the directors said to me last week that he's been talking with Paul and John a lot, and he described John's knowledge of the game as forensic.
Yeah,
so I think the preparation levels are significant.
And John's on holiday in Spain at the moment, but and I was on holiday last week, but the number of daily phone calls and texts you wouldn't believe.
Great. So let's come on to signings. We've mentioned Jack. We have Ross Matthews, who's back for another year.
Yes.
Tell us how happy you are to have Ross back on board. He really seemed to have a significant impact in the playoff games at the end of the season.
Yeah, towards the end of the season, I think that Ross really showed the kind of player he can be. So what we've got to get out of him next season is, Ross, this is you for the whole season. Really make your mark this season.
We have 2 new faces. Last night we announced Kieran MacDonald coming from Airdrie. Some gasps across Kirkcaldy is that there was a suggestion that we might have paid a transfer fee. Was the chequebook out? Have we broached into the millions for Kieran?
No, we haven't. How was it described? It was described as an undisclosed fee. I would say it was an undisclosed small fee. We haven't broken the bank by any means, and it may be that we will recoup it if one of our other players decides to go to Airdrie. And that is in the background at the moment, so it might not actually cost us anything at the end of the day.
Okay, the other signing is one that there were certainly there was a high level of surprise across Raith TV and across the fans that we know. We've managed to bring back Regan Henry.
Yeah.
We sat in this very room in January and you said to me, David, watch this space. I thought you'd maybe been at the brandy cabinet in the boardroom, but you've seen it all the way through, and Regan's a Raith Rovers player. How happy are you with that?
Yeah. Very, very happy. I mean, if you can imagine a team built around Regan Henry, Lewis Vaughan and one or two of the others that we've talked about there, I think it really strengthens the team. He's a class act, Regan. And what pleased me most about him was that when he was injured and he was getting treatment at Celtic, which was the best possible treatment that he could get, and his rehabilitation there, he kept coming to our games. You know, rather than going to see Celtic on a Saturday, he was coming to Raith Rovers on a Saturday, and he was at some of our away games as well. So it shows the lad's commitment. And he's one of the players that the fans, I think, have been crying out for, who will wear the shirt with pride. He really will. He's all heart, and he'll wear the shirt with pride, and he'll bring skill to that midfield.
I think Regan's own post on one of the social media platforms was that he himself was responding to the fans' excitement and desire to see him back.
Yeah.
You mentioned about him following Raith Rovers. After his loan deal had expired, I bumped into him in the tunnel at Easter Road. And he was still wearing his full Raith Rovers kit, the coat, the tracksuit, and I'm saying, Regan, you don't need to be here. He says, I absolutely want to be here.
Yes.
This is the game I want to come and see.
That's the kind of lad he is.
Great. Kevin Nisbet, can you clarify our situation with our Tartan Baffy winner last year?
Yeah.
Skilled lad.
It's the tricky one. Of all of the players that we've talked about, he is the tricky one. He had a clause in his contract that allowed him to talk to other clubs if we didn't go up to the Championship. And of course, we didn't. So he has activated that clause in his contract. But there is another clause in his contract that says that this does not prevent Raith Rovers from claiming training development compensation from whichever club he goes to. The present position is we know there are 3 Championship clubs that are interested in him. We've talked to all 3 of them. His agent is involved as well. And at the moment, it's a question of will one of these clubs pay the compensation that we are looking for? If they do, that's fine. He can go to them. If not, then it'll probably be referred to a tribunal at the SPFL. But all of that is ongoing at the moment, and there's no solution to it yet.
And ultimately, we thank Kevin for the service last year and the kind of memories and goals that he scored. Yeah,
Kevin, again, a really nice young lad, fitted in well with the team here, enjoyed his time here, scored a lot of goals for us. And so we've got to move on from that now. It just wasn't quite enough to get us to the Championship. But yeah, we thank Kevin very much for his contribution. And now we've got to look at, well, if he goes, how do we fill that gap? And we have ideas on that.
One of the great frustrations for us volunteers at Raith TV is that we like to be a bit creative when there's a sign and announced, and it's difficult when bits of gossip around the town and people run to forums happy to show that they are in the know, as we call it. I'm quite happy to be in the know, given that you've given Raith TV a list of 5 additional signings that have put pen to paper. We're going to hold 4 of them back.
Yeah, there's a reason for that, because although they've put pen to paper, we can't really announce them until the window opens on the 11th of June. And they'll then be registered to us. Because even though you've got signatures on a bit of paper, until they're fully registered with the SFA, they don't become our player. So we're holding back on those at the moment until we're absolutely 100% certain that we're getting them. but they have committed to us.
Great. And as this interview goes up, all things going well, Raith TV might have had a little bit of a reveal in terms of the name that you're going to tell us about just now. You're going to describe one of the players who's coming to join us.
Yeah, there's a certain goalkeeper who's well known around these parts, I believe, and I've watched him in the past as well and thought he was terrific, who's going to come back to us as a player coach, because as well as being a great goalkeeper, he is also a fully qualified SFA goalkeeping coach, which will help whatever goalkeepers we have in the squad. And of course, that is one David McGurn.
And a sprightly 39 coming into his goalkeeping prime.
Well, as I keep saying to people, a good friend of mine in the past was a certain Ronnie Simpson. And I remember what he did in Lisbon at that age. And Davy is a sprightly 39. He is prepared to fight for his place in the first team. He's still got that ambition, which is great, but he'll also bring that added dimension of coaching, which I think will help our younger goalkeepers.
And in terms of professionalism, he is the model pro.
None better.
And indeed a great friend of the club in its entirety.
Absolutely.
We have the other names, and we're going to feed them out over the course of the next week, looking at when the contracts are ratified, etc.
Yeah, I think once we get to the 11th, the 10th or the 11th next week, we'll be able to announce those. But for the moment, all I would say is that we're going to strengthen the defence. I'll talk about Kieran MacDonald maybe a wee bit just in a moment. Strengthen the defence, strengthen the midfield, and we've got a couple of forwards in there as well. Because our idea for next season is that without Kevin Nisbet, which is 99% certain, I think, we're looking to maybe have 3 or 4 forwards up there who can score goals. And so we're looking for the goals to be spread. And remember, we've got Louis Vaughan coming back as well, who can score goals, as he's proved time after time. And if he stays free of injury, plus these other ones coming in, and the forwards that we've got already, then next year it won't be a case of the Lone Ranger scoring all sorry to use the word Ranger, scoring all the goals. It'll be spread amongst a group of forwards who will combine.
And you mentioned Kieran, left back, can play in the left midfield. Certainly in our commentaries across the Raith TV season last year, we noted that he gets up and down the park. He's got a good engine, 25, so
24,
degree
25.
of experience there.
Good experience, well respected at Airdrie, and I think a very tough tackling fullback as well. I mean, we were really pleased to have the lad on loan from Livingston, Callum Crane, and we did talk to him about maybe staying with us, but for personal reasons he's decided to go elsewhere. So we see Kieran as a really good substitute for him, and I think will make a big contribution to the back four, which again is one of the things that we talked about at that meeting on the Sunday. How do we get the back four back to what they were 2 seasons ago? Because they were almost invincible 2 seasons ago. Things began to go wrong this past season, and we've got to rectify that, and they've got to rectify that. And I think Kieran will make a contribution to that.
It would be disrespectful if we didn't acknowledge the efforts of the players who've left the club. Chris Duggan, Nat Wedderburn, Nathan Flanagan, Liam Buchanan. I would also like to mention some of the younger talent that's left: Ewan Valentine, Ryan Stevenson and James Berry. We were chatting kind of off camera there, and it's not really a case that these players have been let go per se. They have all had individual opportunities. Could you tell us a bit about
well, let's take the ones that you've mentioned there first. Chris Duggan was very unfortunate last season. He had an awful lot of injury and didn't really get the chance to do a lot. But we decided that we would let him go. Nat played well, and there were some games he was very, very good. The feeling was in other games, he just wasn't so good, and certainly slowed down the ball coming through the midfield. So we're going for a faster model for next year, if you like. And Liam, of course, contributed a number of goals. But Liam's legs are just beginning to go, I think, and even Liam would acknowledge that. But those 3, they played their part last year, and we were really thankful that they did. But we just felt with those 3 it was time really to say
it's time.
It's time for you to
Nathan
go.
Flanagan playing out wide.
Yeah.
Scored one of the goals of the season.
Yes,
as well.
he did indeed. Nathan played well. Again, he was hot and cold. And sometimes Nathan, he's a very emotional kind of player, Nathan. And he got very down if he made a mistake and so on. And the fans will have seen that. Very reluctant to be taken off and substituted and all that sort of thing. So all in all, wrapping up the whole overview of the picture of Nathan, we decided that we're going to be playing a different game next season, and we cancelled his contract.
Difficult decisions, and we say none more difficult than when you come on to looking at the futures of young players.
Right.
Tell us about the young lads who've moved on.
Right. Well, I'll start with Ewan Valentine, who was playing really well at left back. Ewan last summer was in a bit of a dilemma because he had options to go to university to study law or stay as a full-time footballer. Well, he hasn't really broken through this season, and he came to us just a few weeks ago and said that he wanted to go to university to study law and he didn't want to play full-time football anymore. So he goes with our blessing. We hope, and we've said this to him, that he'll continue to play football at some level or another, and who knows, we might see him again in the future. So that's Ewan. James Berry decided that he wanted similarly to go to Stirling University to study a sports-related course. So again, with discussions with James, and he'll do that. And again, we're hopeful that he'll find a club. I'm sure he will, because James has got talent. We know that. So that's him. And then Ryan Stevenson decided that he was going to go for an apprenticeship. And I understand that he's been sitting various exams and things like that. And of course, he's been playing really well for Bowness United this season out on loan. In fact, scored a winning goal in a cup final. So again, talent. So there's three young lads who, if you look at our reserve team of this past year, it was, it got stronger towards the end, but the reality was it ended up third bottom of the Reserve League 2. And none of the three of them were in a situation where they were going to break through into the first team in the foreseeable future. So it was at their request that we've released them. We might have kept them for another year, but that might have just been pretending that they were going to make it. And I think we had to be honest with them and say, right, we think you're making the right decision, but we're not going to lose sight of you.
That's a wholehearted review of where we are and who's moved on from the club as well. But he did also mention that training starts next week, and we will be running the rule over a number of other people who will be invited in to show their skills.
Yeah, there's a number of people beyond the ones that we've talked about that we'll be announcing next week, who we've invited, the manager has invited to come to training so that we can run the rule over them. There's a number of forwards that I'm aware of. I don't know their names, because obviously I leave all that to John and Smudger. I don't interfere in that at all, as long as we've got a general agreement about how we're going to approach things. So they've invited a number of people who will come and will train with us next week, and if they're good enough, there's still room for us to sign them. So we'll get our squad up to maybe a number around about 21, 22. And I know there was a lot of criticism from the supporters last year that we started off with a very small squad, but it actually ended up with 28 players. Arbroath got through the season having used 19 or 20 because they avoided injury. And so they were able to play a settled team, and that made a big difference to them. My hope is that in the coming season we can avoid those 9 major injuries that we've had this season. And if we have a settled team of 21, 22, 23 players, that should be enough for us to be a real force in League One next season.
The competitive fixtures are starting to come out with the Betfred Cup, but friendlies being announced. We'll talk about that with John and Paul in due course, but the bit that's always exciting around about this time of the season is the club kit. We, if I'm right in saying, we'll be staying with Puma, and
yes.
we will, as a result, we'll have 2 new kits.
Aye, well, we'll certainly have one new kit. The home kit is going to be launched, I think the arrangement is it'll be on the 20th of June. We don't know quite where yet, we haven't finalised that, but that'll be the basic home kit for the season. There will also be, come November, what's the word, retro type kit to commemorate the Coca-Cola Cup win 25 years ago. So that will come in due course, but the first one to be launched will be the home kit. The away kit will stay the same for next year with the same sponsor, Tag Games.
And Tag, who of course have been developing the app further, meeting with their club representatives in the last week.
Great success.
What a great partnership.
Great success. And Val McDermott remains as our main sponsor for the home shirt, and we're grateful to all of them for their sponsorship.
Everybody will be hoping that I'll put the thumb screws on before you leave, so I can try and get some detail of the kit. It's always exciting to see what we'll be wearing, and that's a mouth-watering prospect. Something a bit retro on the horizon as well.
Aye.
In terms of fans supporting the development and the boosting the squad, there's been a lot of consultation. We recently spent time at the Q&A. We were lucky enough to get some time with Ali Moore, who kind of described the consultation process for the player development fund, or whatever that might actually become in the future by way of name. What would you say to people who are thinking of getting behind that? And equally, what would you say to people who say, I'm a bit sceptical with a development team, and I've not seen 10 of those players jump into or 5 of them jump into the first team. How do you bridge those two options?
Well, actually, quite a few of them have come up into the first team. If you look through the names like Matthews, Vaughan and so on, Jamie Watson and so on. And for Jamie Watson, this is a big year coming up as well. I'm hoping that he's going to break through into the first team. What I would say about that is that the landscape changed. And we didn't change the landscape. The SPFL changed the landscape by introducing the reserve leagues. I think we've shown our commitment to continuing development of young players with the likes of Kieran and Dylan, and a possible third one as a modern apprentice. I think if you get between 3, 4, 5 young apprentices a year, you're doing pretty well. The days of getting 10 or 12 stars at the age of 16, 17, I think they're gone. The whole game has changed. But we're still looking to pick up youngsters. So there is still very much an emphasis on youth. Yes, we're signing a number of players that we think will help us to get out of League One. But that's partly to give our youngsters a time to mature. And I think we've probably covered this before, but maturing from the age of 17 to being a 20-year-old in the first team for a lot of kids is quite difficult. And the Reserve League, I think, demonstrated that last season. Apart from our 9-1 win against Stirling Albion, we struggled in a lot of games because it was boys against men.
You mentioned earlier about the link between the players and the fans, the board and the fans, the management and the fans. What are we looking to build on coming forward into the next season? There seemed to be togetherness towards the end as we entered the playoff campaign, and we came out with the disappointment of not winning the league, albeit we acknowledge that our growth earned that over the course of the season. Do you feel there's positivity that we can build on? I
definitely think so. I mean, let's be honest, that's the second year in a row that we've come within a hair's breadth of being promoted. And as I said earlier, you know, if we'd won half the games that we'd drawn, we would have been promoted. I think strengthening the squad, going to this model that we are in now, and continuing the philosophy of the attacking, fast-flowing football, which we've shown we can do, I think there are good reasons to be hopeful for next season. Obviously, we've put the boat out a wee bit in order to get players like Regan Henry, and so finance. I'm going to mention money, and I very rarely mention money because I leave that to the accountants on the board. But money is all important in this in order for us to get to where we want to get to next year, which is definitely the championship. Any suggestion on social media that the board, the management are not keen on promotion is just rubbish. I have to say that. We are as committed as any fan to getting this club promoted to where it should be. And as you know, we suffer the pain just as much as anybody else supporting the club. So in terms of buying the new kit, supporting the player development fund, continuing to put your money in for the lotto, which is now at £17,500. Now there's something well worth winning, I think, and buying season tickets. season tickets, I think, are a thing. They've slowed down a wee bit just now. I'm hopeful that people will rally round, get their season tickets. Remember that the two friendlies that are arranged against Hamilton and Spartans, the season tickets are valid for them. It's well worth getting a season ticket before those games. All of that is going to make a big contribution to us being able to pay the wages of these players, including the young players, in the season ahead. And that's where it all comes together.
An opportunity for fans to be the kind of financial 12th man, woman and child as well.
Yeah.
Some a really wide-ranging degree of options with regards to season ticket prices as well. I was hearing that 1,000's the target. I think we're somewhere heading between 600 and 700 at the moment.
I think we're just about at the 700 just now, but it needs to go above that, to be honest, because when we look at the gates and so on that we've got, although our gates are by far the biggest in League One, the money coming through the turnstiles from people paying at the turnstiles is by no means enough to keep this club afloat. So that's where our sponsors come in, people getting hospitality, all those things add up and are absolutely crucial to the success of this club.
Can you tell us a wee bit about the wider infrastructure? We're now a season in with the new surface. What's the feedback been like from, most importantly, our players, but other professionals who've played in it? People like the SPFL, how highly regarded is the surface? And we've kind of ventured into some of the community groups using and some low-level hiring of that. What's the feedback on the pitch?
It's first class. Our players in particular love it. Players from other clubs love it as well. They've said, players who have artificial pitches saying, yeah, we've got an artificial pitch, but it's nowhere near the quality of this one. So that's all been positive. The SPFL have looked at it. Again, it's been certified for the next year by UEFA, and it's in tip-top condition. It's a Class A pitch. So that's all been good. And of course, we've got Fife Elite Football Academy. This is now their home base, and they're very pleased to be playing on that pitch. The ladies are now using the pitch on a Sunday and for training. And there's other groups as well. That we've got the walking football, the Super Sixes, and all sorts of things. And really, I've not heard one bad comment about that pitch at all. So it has been a really good investment. And coming back to the money question, it's also now helping to generate funds which we are putting into the player fund. And it's helping to pay for some of the players that we're able to buy now.
Will the monies from the surface come back into the club pot, or will, as we eventually see the changing facilities are being kind of revamped and looked at, will that money simply pay to kind of regenerate the pitch when it's got a kind of the top surface has got a kind of 7-year lifespan? Are the club going to see any direct benefit from the hiring money?
Yeah, we are. The money is actually going to go to Start Spark Properties, but we're coming to an arrangement. We haven't finalised it yet, where the Raith Rovers Football Club will get a proportion of all the earnings coming in from the pitch and the use of the dressing rooms, etc., etc. And we've got our, I say new porta cabins, but they're actually second hand, which we managed to get generously donated to us for nothing. And so we're in the process of thinking about how we can develop them into new changing rooms, maybe put showers in, a new first aid room, etc., on all of that. So some of the money will be used to develop the facilities, because one of the things I'm very conscious of is that we're an old stadium, and when I look at some of the facilities that we have for fans around the place, they're the same as when I came in my old man in the 1950s. We need to upgrade toilets, we need to do all sorts of things around the ground to make it a better experience for the fans coming through the gate. But having said that, there is no doubt that part of it will go to pay for the playing staff and making sure that we've got a strong team.
We, as fans, we certainly see things like the floodlights as they were diminishing in power and yes. the upgrade that's gone in there. But we sometimes forget, because we're tuned in with the playing staff in particular, but you are still facing bridges with things like water supply and generators and alarm systems.
Yeah.
So it is a massive stadium to be.
And because of the age of the stadium, these things are expensive to maintain and very expensive to replace when they run out. And we've faced a number of expenses this year, quite crippling expenses over and above the expenses on the medical supplies. But we're managing. But every penny counts, really, is what I'm saying to the supporters. And if we want a stadium fit for the 21st century, which is what John Sim is aiming at and what I would like to see, and also have a football team that's successful, then more than every penny counts. I'll just say one thing in terms of what I mentioned there about the medical supplies and so on. We've also, I don't know if you've noticed, got a new backroom staff in terms of a new physio. Ian Williamson, who I think again is well known around these parts, former player, and Ian came in halfway through the season to replace our previous man, and he and his assistant Nicola have done a great job this second half of the season, and he is signed up hopefully for next season. And there's even a suggestion that he might develop his private practice and run his private practice out of Starks Park, starting sometime next season. So if anybody wants to get specialist treatment from the Starks Park physio, this is the place to come. Watch this space.
He's certainly a very welcome character, a very kind person, is Ian. Looking at yourselves as a board of directors, as you reflect back on the last season, what was the biggest piece of learning for you?
The biggest piece of learning is that it continues to be a struggle. I think we're like every other club in League One and League Two, that we struggle from month to month to make ends meet. And we're having to be imaginative about how we can improve that situation, which is one of the reasons why we've brought Stephen McDonald with his business background on board. And we may well be looking at strengthening the board again in this coming season. And it's that business acumen, successful businessmen that we're needing to tap into in the town.
One of your fellow directors said to me that the target this season is promotion, sustainability and supporter engagement. Would that chime with where you are as our chairman?
Yeah, I think that's a very succinct way of describing the whole thing. Yeah, the sustainability one is an important one for me, because I don't want us to be doing a Brecon City, going up and then coming back down and then going right down to League Two. We've got to be prepared. The first objective is to get promotion. If you've got a 3-year, 4-year plan, you have to divide it up into individual years. First year, we must get promotion, and I'm still saying that, and hopefully it's going to be third time lucky. But then the second year has got to be consolidation in the championship, and I want that consolidation to be something that we can build on going forward, that we're always going to be in the championship as our lowest level that we're playing at, and have ambitions to go even higher.
The thing that you'll have in common with us all, Bill, is that you're a Raith Rovers fan. What message would you give to the men, the women and the children that come through these gates to support this great team? What would you say to them?
I would say let's stick together, because everybody is working towards the same end, which is a positive approach for Raith Rovers to be a successful team and a successful club in the community. We're also doing a lot in the community, as you probably know, and Andy Mill is the director who's looking after all of that. And we're developing our relationships at the moment with the Community Foundation. Now that Judy Hamilton has become chair of that, we've had a meeting with her within the past 2 or 3 weeks, and we've been looking at ways in which we can support them and how they can support the club. So as a community club, that is an emphasis that's going to grow and grow over the next few years. I think it's been a phrase that's been bandied about for the last few years and hasn't really materialised successfully in the way that I would want it to materialise. So we're going to build on that as well. And let's make this a club where everybody, whether you're a supporter, a player, a director, a manager, whatever, let's rally around Raith Rovers and make it a success.
Bill, thanks for being so proactive and inviting us here, and so expansive in your detail that you provided us. We will likely next chat when we're announcing some players, and let's, as someone says, every Saturday afternoon, make sure that we do get right behind Raith Rovers.
Yes, come on, you Rovers.